Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is Zachary Cohen, VSiN.com senior editor with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. It is Tuesday, January 13th. We are recording this at 9 a.m. Eastern, and we are coming off a sweep last night. That's actually, an undefeated 2 days of the show, going back to last Friday and then yesterday. So doing well with these, and we definitely are having a really strong season, so we'll hope to keep it up tonight. I have 4 picks for this evening, but I do want to talk a little bit about what we saw last night before I get into those. I mean, it is a big night of action. We're going to talk about that Thunder Spurs round 4 here very, very shortly. But first, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, the Jazz beat the Cavaliers 123-112 last night as 13.5-point underdogs. And I keep kind of skipping these games where teams are double-digit favorites, and I am going to continue to do so. I'm sorry about that, but man, some of the last 2 of those, like I believe we had the Hornets winning by 27 in OKC as massive underdogs. Now the Jazz winning, by double digits as 13.5-point underdogs. It's definitely, it's possible for double-digit favorites, to lose, but it is easier to skip those games when we have so many to talk about. But man, this Cleveland team is in a really bad way right now, because I've talked about it before in this podcast, and it's acceptable to coast through the regular season when you were a very good team the year before. And, it could be a little bit hard to get up for the regular season games, and all you're thinking about is the postseason. You want to stay healthy. You want to be fresh, but there's kind of a fine line between coasting through the regular season and just being bad. And this team is straddling that line. I mean, they are 7th in the Eastern Conference right now. This is a team that absolutely needs to finish inside the top 6. The Cavaliers, after last season, if they go from that to, having to play in the play-in tournament, that would be an insane drop-off. And there's really no reason for them to be doing this. I know that Max Strus has been out and continues to be out for Cleveland. They will get him back eventually. I don't know when, but that is not a big enough absence for them to be as bad as they have been this season. So I'm just kind of wondering when this team's going to wake up, if this team's going to wake up. I thought we were starting to see some signs because Darius Garland had started to play a little bit better, over the last 2-3 weeks, but the chemistry is just a little bit off, and I'm not even sure what moves this team can make to fix all of this. I've always been a little bit down on the 2-man pairing, the 2 big man pairing of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I love both players individually, but I think it's really hard to win when you have 2 kind of traditional 5s playing together. And I know that Mobley likes to think of himself as a 4. I think a lot of people think of Mobley as a 4, but I think if you want to be the best version of your own team, you need Mobley playing the 5, where he becomes a little bit more of an offensive mismatch with his ability to move and kind of drive and knock down threes, and then defensively can still cover some of the bigger players in the league. So maybe it's, addressing that at the deadline, but I don't know if they're going to make a huge change. But between those 2 playing together and then having kind of an undersized backcourt in Garland and Mitchell, it's just a team that is not constructed perfectly. And last year everything was kind of clicking. This year everything's not. And I just don't know when this is going to change. I think on paper, this team's actually a little bit better than it was a year ago, because I've talked about it a few times. I liked the swap when it happened of Ty Jerome for Lonzo Ball. I think obviously that's aged pretty poorly, but even so, Jalen Tyson has been an awesome player for them in his second year in the league. And I do think that he's a player that is only going to continue to get better and kind of fits this team like a glove. So I'm just kind of surprised to see them struggling this way. And I thought 2 weeks ago that this team was going to start to look like kind of a sleeper to win the Eastern Conference. Not a sleeper, everyone knows who they are, but they had kind of drifted in the odds, behind obviously the Knicks and Pistons. And I saw them get out to plus 650, and I was thinking, that's kind of interesting. This team was supposed to be the favorite heading into the year, but it's just been really, really bad. And I don't know when it's going to turn. But another thing to look at from that game was Keyonte George goes for 32 points and 9 assists. Just another stellar performance from him. And then add to the game, you had Donovan Mitchell saying that George deserves to be an all-star. So that is just kind of speaking to the respect that he's getting around the league. And I've talked about him a lot as most improved player. I have him at 35-1, gave him out at 35-1 back in November, and it's still available at 12-1. And I really don't know how. I really think this is the guy that is going to end up winning this award. I know Denny Avdia is the odds-on favorite right now. Avdia is actually injured with a sore back at the moment. I wonder how much time he'll miss with that. But I do think that this is going to end up being George's award. And I'm not just saying that because I have to play. I think that this is a guy that last year, I've said this before, was an unproductive role player, like a player that was playing big rotation minutes. They were not able to do that trustworthy, they were not able to trust him in those minutes because he was mistake prone. He wasn't able to get to the rim. His shot, it was like a little bit inefficient. Like everything about him was kind of down, like heading into this season. And they did apparently give him a major talk towards the end of the year and like their exit interviews. And clearly he worked very hard over the summer, but he has come back and he went from a bad rotation player to a borderline all-star or an all-star. I don't know what it will be yet, but this guy's been absolutely lighting it up. And I think 12-1 is a crazy price to be throwing on him when I do believe that so many think that he is currently the most improved player. So I've said that, we're running out of times to buy with Keyonte George, but this is probably one of your last chances because a couple more games like this, and I think he's going to move to being the odds-on favorite soon. I don't even know why he's not the odds-on favorite as of right now. So I think 12-1 is a really generous price. Another big result from last night, we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later as well, but the Kings beat the Lakers 124-112. The Lakers were almost double-digit favorites in that game, and this team is now just kind of in a free fall. Like they are 7-12 in their last 19 games, 26th in the NBA in defensive rating over the last 15 games with an defensive rating of 118. So they're giving up 118 points per 100 possessions. This team desperately needs help at the deadline. I don't know what they're going to do. They need a point of attack defender. They need a 3-and-D wing. Like these are all things that they desperately need to put around Luka Doncic. Like you just can't have this many bad defenders around him and LeBron, who's, a bad defender at this stage of his career. They need help. I don't know how they're going to go about doing it. And I don't think it helps, team chemistry, team vibes when you have Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, going out on his podcast with Max Kellerman, that new podcast, Game Over on the Ringer Network. He's saying that they should trade Austin Reeves for Jaren Jackson Jr., which, hey, it's not a terrible idea in terms of the trade, but you can't be LeBron's agent and like talking about his teammate and trading his teammate. Like, it just doesn't, it's not going to make anybody happy on this team. So I don't know what they're going to do. Like I feel bad for JJ Redick because I just think that he's a really good X's and O's coach. And I just think he's been given a team with very few defensive minded players. And also obviously, some major egos at the top of the rotation and just some guys that aren't really coachable. So I'm not sure this is the best situation for Redick. And I do think that he's a great coach. I think he's kind of proven that in, spurts throughout his 2 years in the NBA, but it's been a really tough year, and they are now tied with the Suns atop the Pacific Division. They had a big lead a couple of weeks ago, and I do think it's going to be Phoenix that ends up winning this division. I really wouldn't be surprised if after some shuffling around the deadline, if Golden State finishes above Los Angeles too. So it's just a team that I really do not trust right now, and we'll talk about it later because they do take on the Hawks this evening. But let's get into the games for tonight. I did say I'm not going to stop skipping those double-digit favorites now, and there are two in the NBA tonight. The Rockets are favored by 12.5 at DraftKings as of right now against the Bulls, and the Golden State Warriors are favored by 10.5 against the Blazers. So I'm not going to talk about those two games. Portland has been playing really well, and I've been on them the last couple of nights. So it's definitely a team that I do think is really plucky. And like, I like the way they've been playing defensively, and they got Drew Holiday back. That definitely helps them on both ends of the floor. But with no Denny tonight, this is a game that they absolutely should lose. I don't know that they lose it by 11 plus. I really don't have much thoughts on either of these two games, but they are two games that I would rather skip because they are lopsided spreads. So I want to start with the Suns at the Heat. This is a game where Miami is laying 1.5 points. The total is 230.5, and it tips at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This is a really interesting game. I mean, obviously, I am a Suns fan. I've let you guys know that before, and this team has just been stellar over the last couple of weeks. I mean, over the last 15 games, Phoenix has a net rating of plus 3.6. Over the last 10 games, they've been the third best defensive team in the league. This has just been a really strong team on both ends of the floor. And Miami has been a little bit shaky over that same 15-game stretch. Miami has a net rating of minus 2.4. But, I mean, the Heat are going to be healthy tonight. Norm Powell is the only questionable player. It does seem like he'll play. So I am going to stay away from this game when looking at the sides or totals. I do think that the Suns are going to win, but I don't feel strongly enough to bet it, and I don't feel strongly enough to give it out as a side. But the play that I have in this game is Royce O'Neale over 9.5 points at minus 110. Grayson Allen came back 4 games ago for the Suns, and since Allen came back, O'Neale is averaging 14.5 points per game. I just think that Allen coming back changes everything for this Phoenix team. Like the floor spacing is just so much better. Everybody has a little bit more room to operate. And I think that, O'Neale has really benefited from that as a guy that can knock down corner threes, knock down threes from everywhere, really, and then score in transition a little bit, attack closeouts. Like he's just a really smart player about finding ways to score, even though he's not, probably a natural scorer or a guy that can really score in isolation. He's just found ways to contribute offensively. And I don't think that that's going anywhere, especially in a game with the Heat. I mean, Miami is number one in the league in pace of play. We've talked about that a lot throughout the course of the season. And defensively, this team is strong, but when you're playing games with so many more possessions, it's just that much harder to get stops. So I do think that O'Neale is going to have opportunities here. And I will mention that the Heat are really, really weak when it comes to defending one of the two corners, and they're only okay defending the other one. So I think if O'Neale can kind of get to his spots, he's going to have some good catch and shoot opportunities. And Miami overall this season, just 17th in the NBA at guarding catch and shoot opportunities. And O'Neale scores 67% of his points on catch and shoot jumpers. And, like I said, he can attack closeouts. And this Heat team also 22nd in the league defending in transition. So I really just think this is a game that sets up nicely for role players that can shoot. And I do think that O'Neale is going to make his mark and score 10 plus. So I have a kind of a lean on the Suns. I don't really feel strong about it. I'd rather you not listen to my advice there, but I do like O'Neale to score 10 points here at minus 110. The next game on the list for me is the Bucks hosting the Timberwolves. This game tips at 8 p.m. Eastern. The total is 226.5. The Bucks are 3.5 point favorites. And obviously, a day after coming on this show and giving out Minnesota to win the West and win the NBA Finals, I am taking Milwaukee to cover a short number at home here. And it's really just because I really love this Timberwolves team. I've mentioned that. I went into it yesterday. I talked about it on Cashing Out with Dustin Sweetelson on the VSiN network as well last night. But this team is going to be without Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert here. And I just think that while this team is talented, and skilled without those two guys, it is still going to be really tough to win when you're talking about Edwards being your offensive engine and your kind of your North Star, just everything that runs through, everything they do with this offense kind of runs through Edwards, especially now that he's essentially serving as their lead guard. Like, I just think that missing him against a Bucks team that's going to be, kind of hungry for a win after a bad loss is going to be big. And I feel very similarly about Rudy Gobert being out because I've talked about it before. I really think Gobert is the defensive player of the year this season. I think he's having a wonderful year for the Timberwolves, and not having a rim protector like that against a Giannis Antetokounmpo team is just not going to be a great recipe for success. And I do think that the Bucks coming off a 108-104 loss to the Nuggets, who played like nobody in that game, they are going to be eager to get back in the win column. And I do think that, this is a game where you can kind of trust Doc Rivers to get his guys motivated. They are actually 10-7 against the spread under Doc Rivers when they are coming off an upset loss as a road favorite. And I still think that this Bucks team is a little bit better than other people believe. So I think Milwaukee can win by margin here. I just think they're going to bounce back. They're going to knock down some threes. They're going to take advantage of the absences on the Minnesota side. And I do think they're going to win this game somewhat comfortably at home. And it is a bit of a rivalry with them being located so close to each other. So I think it's going to be an interesting game as well. We're getting ready for Big Game 60 with a big deal to match. Save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription when you sign up using promo code SUPER. Become a VSiN Pro annual subscriber. Bet smarter all year long with full access to our daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, AI-powered prop tools and matchup analysis, 24/7 video and full show replays on the VSiN Watch app, plus all of our betting guides and expert picks for the Super Bowl and upcoming March Madness. Don't miss out on this big game deal. Visit vsin.com/subscribe and use promo code SUPER to save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. That's vsin.com/subscribe. It is a great offer. We are doing so much over the next couple of weeks and months, and I really think it's a great time to be a VSiN Pro. And like I've said a few times on here, I'm doing a ton of tennis already. It's already started to ramp up for me, and the Australian Open starts over the weekend, so we are really going to be getting into it soon. Let's talk now a little bit about the Nuggets at the Pelicans. This is a game where Denver is a 2.5 point favorite at DraftKings. Game tips at 8 p.m. Eastern. The total is 232.5. And this is actually a game where I'm not going to take the Pelicans on the money line. So I'm taking the home dog here. I'm not taking the points. This is just another game where Denver's in a really bad way when looking at the injury report. It does seem like Jamal Murray might come back he is questionable, and having Murray and Gordon out there might be enough to make this a close game, but no Christian Brown, no Cam Johnson, no Nikola Jokic, obviously, and then no Jonas Valanciunas for Denver. Like, those are four key pieces for this team, and it's the best player in the entire NBA in Joker being out, and some of the key role players, like I just said. And I just don't know how you can expect this team to go on the road and beat solid teams when they are missing this much talent. Like, I know that this team is 4-3 since they lost the Joker. They've actually been way better than expected since he went down in that game against Miami. But I do think this Pelicans team is a little bit underrated, and I think that they can be competitive, especially when playing at home. And since James Borrego took over as the head coach of the Pelicans, or as the interim head coach of the Pelicans, they are 2-0 straight up in home games with lines of +3 to -3. And this Nuggets team this season, in that same situation, road games with spreads of +3 to -3, they're just 2-3 straight up. And I think that a really good argument can be made that in this game, with no Joker being out there, Zion Williamson will be the best player on the floor. And I think New Orleans surrounds him with a pretty good amount of talent. So I just really think this is a game where, the Nuggets are definitely going to be the better coach team and, maybe have the better scheme, but I do think the talent will win out for the Pelicans in this game. So I think getting money line +126, that seems pretty generous. And I do think this is a game they're going to win. So I'm going to put a unit on that to win 1.26. Let's move on now to, I believe, the game of the night. I don't know if I'll get any arguments there. There's not really that many great games tonight, and I think that this is the matchup that I think that everybody's enjoyed watching the most throughout the course of this entire season. I think it's a matchup that everybody wants to see in the playoffs. It's the Spurs going to OKC and taking on the Thunder again. OKC is a 7.5 point home favorite. Total is 229.5. This game tips at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I actually don't have a play on this game. I know that's a little crazy. I do have a lean, though. I think that the Spurs are the right side. I'll get into why in the second, but I do think it's very interesting that we have seen a major market, reaction or correction in this contest. The last time we saw these teams play was on Christmas when OKC was at home again. They were 10-point favorites in that game, and now they are only 7.5-point favorites at home, and that's because the Spurs are 3-0, both straight up and against the spread in this series this season. They have been, the kryptonite to this Thunder team. Obviously, OKC has struggled a little bit over the last, 2 weeks. So we've seen kind of other teams get in there and play them a little bit closer and actually go out and beat them. But San Antonio has been the one that has consistently done it. And I do think there's a chance that they end up being close again. But the reason that I think that, it's not because of, I don't think that OKC can win by margin when these teams are at full strength. I just think that without Isaiah Hartenstein, who is out again tonight for this Thunder team, OKC is just a little bit small. And this is not a team that you want to be small against, because obviously Victor Wembanyama is a massive person, just like something we've never seen before. And I think Luke Cornett's had a really good season. He gives them really good minutes at the center spot. And I just think that having, a lack of size against the Spurs can doom you. So that's why I think that the Spurs will find a way to keep it close tonight. But I do think at some point we're going to see OKC get, San Antonio and beat them down pretty good, because you look at some of the numbers when these two teams have played, and it's pretty shocking. In the 3 games that they've played, OKC has a net offensive rating of 107. For context, Indiana is the worst team in the NBA this season in offensive rating at 108.5. So the Thunder, who are one of the best teams in basketball, if not the best, have performed like the worst offense in the entire NBA against this Spurs team. And they're also shooting 28.8% from 3 and making 10.7 threes per game in their 3 meetings with the Spurs. Again, the worst 3-point shooting in the entire league this season by percentage is the Lakers at 33.8%. So OKC is well below that, actually 5 percentage points below that. And I just think at some point we're going to see the Thunder's shooting luck turn, even though I do think this is a rotation filled with kind of streaky shooters and borderline bad shooters. But I do think that at some point they're going to have a hot game against San Antonio and they're going to blow them out of the water. And that's kind of why I'm staying away from this, even though I do think that the Spurs is the right side at 7.5. And, San Antonio is also 4-0, both straight up and against the spread this season, as road underdogs of 6.5 to 12. So they've enjoyed this spot. But I do think, like I said, I think that the Spurs are the right side. So if I were playing this game and being a little bit bolder about it and, felt the need to force it, I would go Spurs plus 7.5 or plus 8. I think I saw plus 8 at -113. but I am going to stay away because I just think that at some point we're going to see OKC play a little bit better and really beat this team down. And I kind of wonder if, all of the, poor performances we've seen over the last, few weeks just kind of builds up into them treating this game like it's a postseason game. They are not going to want to lose 4 in a row against this Spurs team, and they're not going to want to lose to them again on their home floor. So I think you're going to see a motivated OKC squad at the very least. The last game I want to talk about is the Hawks at the Lakers. This game tips at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. The Lakers are 3.5-point home underdogs. Totals 231.5. And the reason that the Lakers are underdogs in this game is because they did play last night, like I mentioned. You are probably not going to see LeBron James on the second leg of a back-to-back, but you never really know, and you never know who else might sit with this being a second leg of a back-to-back. You always try to be careful with your players playing 2 nights in a row, and I don't think the Los Angeles is going to be any different there. But this is an interesting game because, like I said, this Lakers team has just been awful defensively, and the Hawks without Trae Young, now they have CJ McCollum in. He's already played a game for them. This is a better team defensively without Young, and it's actually a really good team defensively without him. So it's now like a borderline top 5 defensive team in the league, or at the very worst, top 10. And I do think that that's something that you have to consider here, because I think they're going to have a much easier time stopping the Lakers than the Lakers are going to have stopping them. And I do think that the Hawks are good enough offensively to take advantage of a really, really weak Lakers defense. So if I had to play a side in this game, I would go with the Hawks and I would lay the points. But the play I really like in this game is Onyeka Okongwu over 3.5 assists at -103. This is a game where Atlanta is going to be without Kristaps Porzingis, still dealing with that illness that we saw from last year, that tricky illness that has cost them to miss a lot of time. And Okongwu has kind of always taken advantage of the time without Porzingis, but he has especially done it as a passer lately. He's had 4+ assists in each of the last 4 games that he's played without KP. He's also had 4+ assists in 7 of the last 9 games he's played without Porzingis. And obviously, I've just said now that this Lakers defense is terrible. They are playing the second leg of a back-to-back. They're going to have tired legs. I think Okongwu is going to find a way to kind of pick them apart when he has opportunities to kind of run the offense a little bit from the elbow. And I do think he's going to have some of those. And I think when he does, he's going to find some cutters. He's going to find some shooters. I just think that it's going to be very easy for him to kind of read the game and make plays. And honestly, the only thing that I'm a little bit worried about here is that, the Hawks could end up winning this game somewhat convincingly if we see, the bad end of that injury report for the Lakers, if, they hold out multiple players. So I think that the Hawks are going to win this game, and I do think that they might do it by margin. So that could end up hurting us, but I'm willing to take the shot on Okongwu to have at least 4 assists just because he's been doing it so regularly. Before we recap our best bets for tonight, attention any listeners who are new to VSiN, signing up for our free daily newsletter is a great way to catch up. Delivered straight to your inbox every morning, VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, and strategies for the day's betting menu. Sign up for free now at vsin.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That's vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. All right, well, let's recap quickly what I have for tonight. I have 4 plays. We're hoping to build off, a great Monday and a great, Friday of the show and just kind of keep it going. But we have Royce O'Neale over 9.5 points at -110 versus the Heat. We have the Bucks -3.5 at -108 versus the Timberwolves. The Pelicans money line +126 versus the Nuggets. And Onyeka Okongwu over 3.5 assists at -103 versus the Lakers. I can't wait to see that Thunder Spurs game for tonight. I'm also looking forward to see if my Suns can kind of stay hot against the Heat down there in Miami. But it's going to be an awesome night of hoops, and I hope that you all join me on the Wednesday edition of Hardwood Handicappers, and we'll be back with some more shows the rest of the week, and we'll have JVT and Kelly Biblin on towards the end of the week. JVT joining me Thursday, Kelly joining me Friday. I can't wait to talk to them. But until then, good luck with your bets tonight, and join me tomorrow for Hardwood Handicappers.